Welcome to the Orange is the New Black podcast, a podcast for diehard Bengals fans. I'm your host, Ace Boogie, joined by my co-host, Zim Hude. Zim, say what's up.
What's up? Hello, world. How's it going this evening? Staying corona free, I gather.
I hope so. So today we have a lot of items to talk about. We're going to talk about some of the interviews that went on with Dan Horde and Zach Taylor. We're going to talk about Trent Williams. We're going to talk about it all, the uniform changes, all of it. We're going to talk about Andy Dalton. So let's get it. So what do you want to talk about first, Zim? What are we kicking it off with first?
Let's talk about, we could currently talk about, at the very beginning of this, I've just been watching a lot of mock drafts, but more importantly, more than anybody that's crossed my radar is Mel Kiper, dropped his 4.0. He goes into the second round. I was told that it goes and gets offensive tackle. I think it's Jackson from USC. If someone has seen it, correct me if I'm wrong, because you need ESPN Plus to see the ranking online. They just did a special on ESPN probably about an hour ago. But in the first round, they talked about Joe Burrow, people not trading out of the pick. And I don't really have anything new to say about Joe Burrow, except you start hearing some of the stories. I heard about a bunch of stories of him in Ohio State. So there are a lot of non-believers that say that Joe Burrow wasn't a starter at Ohio State, but you hear stories about how he fractured his hand, how he was still competing, how he was still a warrior, how he was getting beat up in practice. You're hearing all these different stories. All the teammates, everybody saying that he's great. Everything is just, I don't know, it's just coming full circle, and I feel like we're really close. We're 9 days away at the time that we're filming this. I purposely screenshot all the negative comments all day on my phone, and I have a folder for them for all the negative people that say that Joe Burrow isn't going to win here and all that stuff like that. And I'm working on a visual board. My wife got me into this thing too. So I have like this thing where I get fueled up by a lot of different things as I'm going throughout the day. I'm working on a visual board. Some of the most comments that just get under my skin the most, like I'm just kind of using them just to say later on, we're going to find these guys and we're going to say, what was that you were saying about Joe Burrow? Because I know that there's very few times in history that a quarterback, like if you just go back and look at Andrew Luck's of the world. The only team that I seen that had legit weapons was the Cam Newton team. There's very few times when the number one quarterback has this many weapons, and that alone makes me feel very, very, very optimistic about our future. Does that mean we're going to win a Super Bowl year one? I don't think so, but that's not how I'm judging our success, and I'm very excited about this. And in closing on my Joe Burrow intro here, Joe Burrow is a Lil Uzi Vert fan. If you all don't know, I've named my son Uzi. I'm the biggest Uzi Vert fan you will ever meet in your life. I think that this is already written, and Joe Burrow is going to be like this. I already made Burrow babies clothing. I already got Burrow jerseys. So this is something that is just, it's all clicking, coming together. Joe Burrow's favorite candy is my favorite candy, caramel apple pops. If you guys are not familiar with caramel apple pops, go get some. Go Google it online. Charms makes it. It's the greatest candy on earth, and it's like I don't even eat sweets a lot. It's my one addiction that I just cannot stop eating. But Uzi Vert, Joe Burrow doesn't even tweet, and the only times that he tweeted was to retweet Eternal Take. And if you're older listening to this, you may not understand what I'm saying about Uzi Vert, but he is the rock and roll Led Zeppelin fusion of rap. It's like the changing of the guards, and that he's very meaningful in the rap game to me. And I think he's a very special artist. And Joe Burrow recognizes that. Not to take anything away from anything, and you might think that's weird, but I think it says a lot because Uzi Vert is a very aggressive and very, very, very you know what I'm saying? I don't even have a word to describe it. He's a very polarizing force. And the fact that Joe Burrow says that he turns up to that before a game is all I needed to hear. That's my favorite artist. Come on. It's already written, bro.
Right.
They said Ace go punch the bag one time for it.
I will do it by the end of the show. I'll go ahead and punch the bag in the back. We've got the Steelers punching bag in the back. Someone asked me in the comments a week ago to put one in there. One question that we have from the super chat through my guy Rick. Man, what's going on, Rick? I appreciate the nice sentiments that you've given us here. What will be the order of the AFC North in 2020? I think, from my perspective right now, depending on how things go into the draft, I really have to see how things shake out with Burrow and how they address the line and the defense. But if I had to give you an answer today, Rick, right now, I still will probably put the Ravens at number 1. I think the Bengals are number 2. I think we're followed by the Cleveland Browns, and I think that the Steelers, it's tough. It could actually be between the Steelers and the Browns. But right now, I'm going to say the Browns just because we don't know what Ben Roethlisberger is going to come back looking like off of that Tommy John surgery. Now, Steelers fans are probably going to hate me because they're going to be like, we went 8-8 last year, but I think that is going to be crucial into what next season will look like. Zim, if you had to give an order of what the AFC North would look like in 2020, what would you say?
I'm very superstitious about this type of stuff, right? But I will say that the Bengals will not be in last place.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds good.
The Bengals will not be in last place 2020.
It is pretty early.
This is arguably, like, I could argue talent wise, the AFC North has 3. I mean, I don't even want to include the Bengals, but the AFC North has 3 of the 3 teams that had the most talented roster in football. You could easily have an argument that the Browns, although they may not have the best organization and everything like that, but the Browns, the Steelers on defense, and the Ravens all around probably round out the top 10 in the AFC. Not even the AFC, the NFL. And then we're in the same division as them. And I'm not naive. I'm not naive to think that our roster could compete with the talent level of it. But I do believe that there is one ultimate, tool that it doesn't matter if your talent level is the very best. And if you have one of the top 5, top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, it will catapult you to the top. And we see it every year. The Seahawks never have the most talented roster, or they did back in the Kaepernick days in that era, whatever. But they don't have the most talented roster currently right now, and I feel like they never do. But they always have Russell Wilson, and I think that's what the X factor that Joe Burrow could be, like coming out the gate.
Right. I think when you spoke on Joe Burrow earlier, I think we've heard a lot of things this week. We saw a lot of his personality on display with the Joe Burrow 360 that was introduced by NFL.com, where we got to hear from his high school coaches, and they told interesting stories, just like Joe Burrow apparently received a second-place trophy and threw it in the trash, completely threw it in the trash, didn't want it, and also was given back that trophy and then disfigured the trophy because he was not cool with second place at all, which that's what I love to hear coming in for a guy that's going to be a rookie. And then you also hear about his fiery personality, seeing that come in against a team like the Steelers. I can't wait for that to happen. Shifting gears, there is another question in the chat from Wolf King 513. What are we doing with Dalton? That is one of the topics that we wanted to hit on throughout this show. In terms of Dalton, from my opinion, I think that the Bengals really kind of, in a sense, botched this entire transaction because they waited and tried to hold their cards and hope that they could squeeze, in my opinion, I think, a higher draft pick out of the Chicago Bears, and the Chicago Bears pretty much hit them with their poker face and said, well, we'll raise your Andy Dalton and Nick Foles for a lower draft pick. And I think that that's what they went with. So this has kind of put the Bengals in a situation where they have one or two options, right? You can either release Dalton outright, which could be on the way, or you can stall and wait and hold him on the roster and make things very uncomfortable for your new rookie Joe Burrow and hold him into the preseason and wait for one of those teams or one of those quarterbacks to go down with the injury. That's the only time that you will have any kind of leverage when it comes to Dalton. But as we talked about before the show, me and Zim kind of talked about that post that Andy Dalton put up with him throwing in the backyard with his kids. Is that just a social distancing post? Does that mean that something is on the way? I'm not sure. Zim, what are your thoughts on Andy Dalton?
I don't think anything of it. I think he probably does that every single day of his life. I think Andy Dalton should be. I never doubted Andy Dalton's talent, and I think like a lot of people, just because people like myself criticize him so heavily for giving up in clutch moments, not the famous 4th and 3, the famous, like 3rd and 10. Like, there's so many different players that I could pinpoint and say, like, yeah, that's not the guy. But I don't think that Andy Dalton doesn't love football. I do think he loves football, and I think he wakes up every day and he probably works towards like his dream. And I think he's probably walking around with a chip on his shoulder. And I just think he's working out like every day. And I don't think the Bengals told him to do it. I just think that did somebody say I have a bra on? What the fuck?
For those listening to the podcast, we do have the live going on right now. You can follow our live if you miss this on my channel at New Stripe City. Zim is on Instagram at Zim_Hude. He is not wearing a bra. He is wearing a tank top.
I have a tank top, but why when he said that, I immediately feel like my tits are out or something like that. Like, I gotta go put my tits up. All right, look. But Andy Dalton, I feel like loves football. I think he's always practicing, and I don't think it means anything. I just think like he just posted it up. And if it's a reminder for people that he does have accuracy when he's not under pressure, there you go.
Right. Speaking of under pressure, we talked about the offensive line. And Zim, you had a list that you had together of some offensive lineman rankings. And obviously offensive tackle, offensive guard possibly are going to be options that the Bengals are going to be looking at, right? That's if you had to point to some weaknesses, offensive line has to be at the top of that list, especially with you going after a quarterback and a franchise quarterback and Joe Burrow. So if you could, Zim, please give me your rankings and your thoughts on this draft class for some of our fans that might not be aware of those linemen, because you definitely have a great list that you put together.
Okay, and there's two guys that are not on this list that my DMs. I mean, I think people think that I'm gonna block them if they like talk trash on my page, so they like DM me and be like, man, no disrespect, but I'm gonna go over my list. Number 1, I have Andrew Thomas, Georgia. I feel like he fits the mold. I feel like he's everything that Jonah Williams brought to the table. Consistency, will play in the NFL 10 plus years, like no cap. Doesn't have the big crazy plays that like a Mekhi Becton, and I'm gonna get to later has, but every single game shows out, grades out well. Next, I have Tristan Wirfs from Iowa. Third, I have Jedrick Willis from Alabama, who that could have went 2-3. That could have got switched around. Josh Jones, I have as my number 4. And that's very interesting because Josh Jones is a guy who plays the tackle position at Houston, very athletic, love the size. I love the age. I love everything. He fits the profile. And it's a guy that could potentially be there at number 33. There is going to be a run on tackles, and 4 of them are going to go. He might not be one of them. And the reason why is because Mekhi Becton, who a lot of people have above that, a lot of people have that above him. He might go there, and that's what make Josh Jones fall to us. Ezra Cleveland, I have after that, who graded out so crazy at the combine in every measurable possible. But the problem is the production on tape, the different games that I watch, he's constantly getting beat in space, which is going to be something I think that the Bengals are going to be converting over to try to appease Joe Burrow in this next thing. You're going to see a lot of 4 wide, 5 wide sets. The tight end position is not going to be what it was like for this team moving forward if they're accommodating Joe Burrow. And Ezra Cleveland on tape doesn't fit that. Can they coach him up? I'm not sure. I don't know how much faith you have in Turner, but he's my number 6. Number 7, I have Ben Bartch. Number 8, I had Austin Jackson. And Austin Jackson is another guy that's been getting linked to us also. And it's a guy I wouldn't mind taking at number 33. There's so many guys right there at the top of that second round. It's so hard for them to Drew sample this. Like number 9, my number 10 was Jack Driscoll. And that's only because I posted this too. I feel like he's the most slept on lineman in this draft. He gave up a total of like 20 pressures his whole entire collegiate career. Like, the guy is super, super consistent. He got hurt. And I think because he doesn't have a lot of splash plays or whatever, like, I watched him against the best of the best at Auburn, and he held his own every single time. And it's a name that I don't really hear that much. The names that I did leave off are Cesar Ruiz, who is 20 years old. He's a center from Michigan. I just don't think the Bengals would be looking or want to convert him over or move him over based on the conversations, or not conversations, based on the interviews that Zach Taylor has said. Also, another guy is Isaiah Wilson from Georgia. He fits the bill on everything. I wanted to ask Ace before I finalize this list. And so for my list, this is the thing. For my list, I have Isaiah Wilson at like number 8. And then I also have Cesar Ruiz at like number 7.
Right.
But this is my Bengals list. And I just think based on the conversations and the different things that have come out, it just didn't match up. But I did want to ask Ace on his Prime list. If you guys don't know, Ace has developed a program called Prime. This Prime looks into the Duke Tobin history, and it goes and pays attention to all the different characteristics and traits. And I wanted to see, where does Isaiah Wilson or Cesar Ruiz, because I could be misjudging this, but based off of what I've seen, because Zach Taylor, we're going to get into, was on Dan Patrick's show, and he also met with Dan Hoard, and he had rave reviews for Xavier Philo. So, right. Which makes me believe that they're absolutely thinking about starting that guy. He came out and said Trey Waynes is starting. He came out and said a lot of guys are starting, like definitively.
Right. Su'a-Filo, I think, like you touched on, definitely probably has that right guard spot on lock. In terms of Isaiah Wilson, looking at his prime score, he's sitting at a 4 out of 5. So that's extremely high. If you're looking for a comparison of someone that he would be higher than, you talk about Mekhi Becton. They actually would have him as higher than someone like Mekhi Becton, who comes in at a 3.86. So it's still pretty close, given what kind of round grade they have on those guys. That could determine which way that they go with that. You talk about one of the top guys on their list, which they probably won't be able to get, would be Jedrick Wills. I think he's expected to go way before 33. You talk about Andrew Thomas, that's a 4.21. He's likely going to be gone. You talk about hearing that the Bucs are going to possibly trade up as well. The Browns are in the market for a new tackle. Some of these guys are going to be gone.
Tackle.
Some of these guys are
Ezra Cleveland keeps on getting linked to the Browns too. I keep on seeing him out.
Ezra Cleveland actually comes in at a 4.31, so he's up there as well. PFF believes that he's a 4th round projection, but you have to kind of take these projections with a grain of salt. I trust PFF just because they work with the team, so maybe they know some insight that we don't know. But right now, he is somewhat higher than some of those other guys that I named as well. So I think when you look at it all together, Tristan Wirfs, he's probably gone. You look at Jack Driscoll, he's another guy that could appeal to them. Lucas,
that's the guy. That's who I'm saying is my number 10.
Gotcha. Also, Lucas on my list.
A lot of people kept on. Yeah, that's the third name. Lucas Nguyen, Isaiah Wilson, and Cesar Ruiz are the 3 guys that I kept on getting. Like, why is he not on your top 10? And so what I was going to ask you is, do you have, like, based off the Prime, can you share your screen, or can you just tell us what is the 10 most viable options that you think the Bengals would be saying from offensive line? We didn't talk about this before this, but I didn't know if you had that already, like, ready to go.
I do have it up. If we're talking in terms of tackles, I could go by the prime score, or I could go by the round. So if we're just going strictly off of like the highest prime score, Jedrick Wills still is the number 1 guy. He's there at 4.50. After him, you actually have a guy by the name of Prince Wanego Tega. That's another guy that could be.
We dropped that on our live last week.
Yes, we actually did pick him up on our live as well.
That was on
there's a gentleman by the name of Copeland Mikvitz, I believe that's his name. He's a guy that's a late round pick. So, if they were to take 2 tackles and they wanted to pick one later, you probably hear that guy. The next highest guy is actually Ezra Cleveland. So he's up there. And then there's no surprise with this one because the Bengals actually met with this guy virtually, Cameron Clark. But he's another guy that's going to be a later round kind of option for them. If they're going with another tackle in like the 6th or 7th round, it would be that gentleman. The other 3rd highest guy on the list is Jack Driscoll. So the guy that you talked about a little bit earlier that was in your top 10, he's there. You also have Lucas Niang, followed by him. He's got the 4.23. Then you've got Andrew Thomas, Josh Jones, Tristan Wirfs, Austin Jackson. So a lot of these guys really fit that mode. If you're looking at guys that don't fit the mode with the lowest scores, you're talking about Kyle Murphy. You're talking about a Matt Parrott. You're talking about A Mekhi Becton surprisingly does not fit their mold. He's at a 3.86. So you're talking about
Mekhi Becton. If anybody has seen anything about Mekhi Becton, he kind of reminds me of I cannot think of this guy, and I'm so mad at myself. But he has these big splash plays where he's absolutely just knocking guys over, and like not even in a standard run play. Like I mean, it just in a standard blocking transition, not even like a zone thing, nothing where anyone is like interweaving or anything like that. Just knocking guys out and pancaking them. He has these big flash plays, but he has these plays where he just takes off. Like
right. And when I'm looking at it, it looks like his weight isn't where it should be in terms of what the Bengals like at right tackle. His body mass, his BMI isn't there. His arm length is a little bit shorter than what they have traditionally looked at. And then you look at his age as well. So those are all factors that kind of go against him there. In terms of guys that it works for, like let's say, for instance, we're talking about Lucas Niang. You look at some of the strong points are they have drafted linemen from his conference. They have drafted someone from his school. You talk about that BMI. He's the perfect size that they like there in terms of height and weight. He also has the hand size that they look for as well. So a lot of arm length things, a lot of things that are really like important. He's kind of checking the boxes on. So that's what, for the most part, makes up some of these metrics in prime. And it's funny that we talked about this because when I was watching the NFL Network, it seemed like they were doing something similar to prime in terms of an athleticism score, productivity score as well. Outside of that, I know you also had a linebacker list. I'm going
to get to the linebacker list in 1 second. I want to go over some of these things real quick because I don't want to. I told everybody to come on here in the live and talk to us, whatever. Andrew Humphrey, what's up, bro? Edward Riddle, he said he wanted us to talk about Stephen A. Smith. I've been doing this thing where I'm not shedding light on all these people that are talking all this craziness that I don't even know if it's clickbait anymore. I just think that people are just misinformed.
Yeah, I definitely feel you on that. Just to briefly touch base on it, because like Zim, I agree we shouldn't really give these guys any attention, especially when you're talking about a guy in Stephen A. Smith that thought that Hunter Henry was playing on a Monday Night Football game when he was deactivated for the season, and talking about and reference guys that weren't even on the Chiefs at the time that he made that reference. To me, it's all about spreading a narrative to try to get Joe Burrow away from the Cincinnati Bengals. The national media, in terms of some of the bigger memberships, I can't speak for all of them because we are friends with some of them on Twitter, but you talk about the talking heads like the Stephen A. Smiths, the Colin Cowherds, those guys, literally they kind of all have this agenda for these players to play in big markets because it's more beneficial to them. There's more stories that they can write. There's more people that they can access, but you kind of really essentially see through the flaws when they talk about and reference the Miami Dolphins being a good football team, because they're not. They're complete trash. I live in Florida. The Miami Dolphins are complete trash. They're not a good organization. They had a guy that was one of their offensive line coaches that was disbarred from the team from being on drugs. So we'll just keep it that because this is a PG-13 show, but this isn't a model franchise at all. So when you talk about instead of going to the Bengals, going to the Miami Dolphins, you clearly know absolutely nothing about the Bengals. And Stephen A. Smith, I think that a lot of people realize that gets Bengals fans tense and it gets us to pay a lot of attention to it. So like Zim is saying, I think that we should start to tune out the noise, and it's all complete trash. Honestly, it's complete trash. And this is coming from a guy that's a Steelers fan. So what do you expect? He's probably scared about what Joe Burrow is going to do to Big Ben and his quarantine body, pounding powdered donuts right now. So don't even focus on any of that stuff. It's just noise. The Bengals will be picking Joe Burrow. There will not be a trade. Zach himself is already.
The Dolphins came out and said that they don't have any aspirations of giving up that much because they're trying to build a better roster and they can't see themselves giving up multiple first-round picks for one guy. And Zach, like you were just saying, said if a team is willing to do that, then it verifies what we think about our guy. And that guy's got to be Joe Burrow, right? Like, who else are we talking about? I told my wife that same thing, and she said, yeah, that just verifies, like, why would they trade it? If everybody wants this one guy out, that would be silly for y'all to, like, give it up. And she knows.
You're talking about a guy that Gil Brandt just came out today. Sorry to cut you off, but a guy that Gil Brandt came out with today saying that he compared Joe Burrow to Peyton Manning. So for me, Am I going to take the advice of somebody like Colin Cowherd or someone like Gil Brandt that has the experience of 20 to 30 years of scouting experience? I'm going to go with Gil Brandt, honestly.
I think Joe Burrow's better than Peyton Manning. I don't think he'll ever be able to be Peyton Manning, like, because there's only one Peyton Manning. But as far as like his ability to extend the play, right, Peyton Manning never. Ever.
I would be happy if he could be anything close to Joe Montana, Peyton Manning, or Tom Brady. I would take a pinch of that.
The two, if anybody out here has any doubt about Joe Burrow, and you just think like, I don't know what you could think. The number one person that you could look at and say this is how he plays is maybe to me the floor would be Tony Romo. That's the floor.
Right.
Like he plays like that. In the ceiling, or maybe he can eclipse the ceiling, is Steve Young. If you look at those two players, and I'm not comparing Joe Burrow, a college prospect, to either one of those two players, but there is no bone in my body that thinks that he won't be exactly on the small side what Tony Romo did for his team and for that franchise. We talking about just the playoff win and stuff like that. Like that's easy work. Joe Burrow won't ever be like, once we get that, we won't even remember the fact that Joe Burrow will be judged so much more heavily than you all realize. Joe Burrow could win a Super Bowl, and people 4 or 5 years from that will still be like, man, he ain't did it. Like, look at like the decline of a Joe Flacco or somebody like that. Like, it's not far-fetched that these quarterbacks win really, really big, and then a couple years later, like, I mean, look at Cam Newton. You know what I'm saying? Like, this guy's the MVP, but people are treating him as though, like, even him with a bum arm isn't better than 40%, if not 50% of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Even a Kaepernick, like all these guys. So to me, the floor is always going to be like Tony Romo because he plays on that level. But
that's a pretty good floor.
That's a pretty good floor. But it depends on how you expect it. If you're going to be one of those guys that's going to be judging Joe Burrow for his whole entire career based on the success of Chase Young or any of the other quarterbacks like Tua or anybody in this draft, then we'll see. You know, it's all about the fit. It's so many other different factors that have to happen. The Bengals have to, as an organization, better themselves. They have to put the resources around them. So when we're talking about the number 33 pick, I've really, since we did that live the other day, I always play this one thing in my head about when Marvin Lewis left. He only did a couple interviews where he even mentioned the Bengals, but he always said, and he said this twice, when he did like a little thing on NFL Network and ESPN, he said they have to fix the line. And from a defensive specialist like a Marvin Lewis, for him to say that, it lets me, that's very telling to say that they were super, super limited. Andy Dalton, a lot of people brag about how fast he gets the ball out. It's because they're super, super limited on what they can do, what they can run, and how predictable it'll be, especially on third down when teams can absolutely destroy you when they know you're going to pass. The biggest dilemma that the Bengals have had in the last couple of years is the offense has never produced to the point where you could just have Carl Lawson in a third down situation in a NASCAR package. The biggest problem is the defense always looks a lot worse than what it really is because they're always playing from behind. So he still has to play gap integrity. He still has to set the edge. He still has to do these things. Teams like the Chiefs go up 20 points on you. They're flying upfield. They're killing quarterbacks. It's time to go. It's time to eat. But Bengals have never led with that. So defense wins championship, guys. Every week we do these lives in here. They always talk about the defense is terrible. The defense could be average. If the Bengals score 28, 30 points a game, the defense will be amazing. It will look so amazing to you just by them scoring those points. Playing with the lead versus playing from a deficit is two major things that are super, super overlooked in all of this. When we look at the Chiefs, no one can name their linebackers. And when you do name the linebackers like a Ragland, who they don't even have, they don't even use in the way that you guys are saying that you need a linebacker. That's why I was telling Ace before this, the next part of this is I think one of the most underrated signings of this thing is Josh Bynes. Me and Ace both had PFF, and I was looking at his grades compared to like Chiefs linebackers or any of the top linebackers. Josh Bonds grades out in the top coverage portion and never graded under 75.5, which is very, very high for a linebacker this past year in all of his games. That alone will give the Bengals the freedom not to force the issue, because I saw some people saying linebackers got to be number 33. It does not.
No.
In this NFL or whatever, the linebacker, as we saw later on in the year, the Chiefs stopped playing their linebackers. They started, and that's exactly why Sean Williams and Von Bell and McKenzie all can work together in that aspect. And it's going to be really fun. As Zach Taylor said, it's going to be really fun because they're watching that and they're seeing these different things. So everybody wants a Ray Lewis, but Ray Lewis don't come out every year. The guys that I thought were so amazing, even if you look at what's the kid from the Bears, what's the linebacker that just got that was considered like maybe the next.
I know who you're talking about.
The name doesn't even pop off like that, right? Because there's only going to be so many elite linebackers, and when you get one, it's going to be a force to be reckoned with. But to go reach for that, to me, linebacker and running back are the two least valuable positions in football.
Yep, you were talking about Roquan Smith, but
Smith. So he was Ray Lewis every year ago in the draft.
I agree with everything you said there. In terms of linebacker, I think the earliest that they should look at one is third round. You look at Jermaine Pratt last year; he was a guy that they got in the mid to later rounds, and they came out pretty good on that end. So some of the guys, I'll let Zim tell his list, but for me right now, in terms of prime, some of the guys that stick out at the top of that list that I would love to have personally, especially after watching this film, is Logan Wilson from Wyoming. He's the highest guy on the prime board at a 4.73. He's expected to go in the third or fourth round. That I think would be perfect. Unfortunately, the second guy after him is another guy that I really like. Unfortunately, he got injured during the season, and that's Marcus Bailey from Purdue. 4.61. I'd love to take a fifth round, 6th round flyer on him, similar to what they did with Rondy Anderson last year. I would love to see that. You also talk about Zach Bond of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
More of a versatile linebacker, has been more of an edge rusher, but could be the perfect guy in terms of that transition to the 3-4 that people have been putting out there that the Bengals may be switching to. But he's also a guy that does have some cover potential, which sounds crazy because this is a guy that is an edge rusher, but also has that ability to cover as well, the athleticism. He was projected to be a late first round, possibly second round, at least lock. Now it comes out that his urine sample was diluted, so that could push him back. So that's a guy to keep your eye on.
And excuse me, Ace, Adam Schefter came out and said this about a couple hours ago because it was a diluted sample and it wasn't part of the new bargaining agreement that could penalize him. He doesn't see him dropping. That's what Adam Schefter said.
Cool. So if Zach Bond does make it to 33, that's probably a pipe dream because I think that he could go in that late first round area. You also have some other guys that make the list. Evan Weaver, that's a guy that could be in the 6th round. And when I listen to some of these other podcasts and some of these draft analysts, the first thing that I heard before I even did prom was that there's not much of a difference between a guy in the 3rd round and the 6th round. And after doing a lot of this research, after looking at a lot of the metrics, I feel that rings true when it comes to getting past a certain crop of guys. There's not really that much of a difference between some of the guys in the 3rd round versus some of the guys in the 6th round. You guys were on here last week where we took Willie Gay. That's another guy that's pretty high. We talk about a 3rd round grade there. Malik Harrison, another guy from Ohio State, he's got a 4.29 grade as well. So there's a lot of options that the Bengals could be looking at with these guys, and they don't necessarily have to take a Patrick Queen that early. They don't have to really jump out the window and do that. And Kenneth Murray, in my opinion, he's not good against the run. He might be a decent coverage linebacker, but he, to me, isn't worth, in my opinion, the 2nd round pick versus us getting someone like a Josh Jones. I think Josh Jones brings you a lot more value than a guy like Kenneth Murray would. But with that being said, Zim, let's go ahead and get into your linebacker list, and then we can try to wrap up here as well. We're at 35.
Ryan McKeon, he keeps on saying, and he needs to clarify, there's not a lot of starting positions open. There
I
are
think
there,
I
there
think
are on the
what
offensive line. So he's saying, bro, stop what?
he's replying to someone in the chat. So it seems as
Okay.
if someone I think is saying that we should either trade up or something like that. And I think he's saying that we don't have enough picks or something like that. I'm not sure exactly.
We might not have a lot of picks like the Patriots have 12, right? But I will say this. We have a big advantage in this virtual draft is that we have the first pick of every single round. So we don't have this rush, frantic pace to our drafts. We have a whole 12-hour, 18-hour period in between nights where we're actually phoning phone calls. We're resetting our board. So the Bengals have this is the ultimate draft for them to be able to have this luxury where they can reset each night and they don't have to race against the clock. I will say that. And for that, I do want to say that later right after we do this, I just want to talk about like the Bengals should be able to trade back in a second, but I'm going to tell you how and what. But Ace asked me my linebacker rankings. My number one, of course, is Isaiah Simmons, who I don't believe will be there. My next is Patrick Queen. My next is Willie Gay Jr. Willie Gay Jr. is, I don't know if it's this, and he's a little unorthodox. When you watch him on film, he constantly picks the wrong angles. He constantly does a lot of things wrong. But when he is on, it's perfect. Like, I mean, it's in the end. He's way faster. He's more rangy. It's violence. It's pure destruction on the field. When the guy is on, and I don't know if I'm more afraid of him going to like the Browns or the Steelers or somebody like that, than I am actually. I just want him out of the division. If we aren't going to get this guy, he is going to absolutely cause us headaches. Willie Gay Jr. does not need to be in the AFC North if he is not on our team. Okay, after that, then I go into Zach Baum because I do kind of still consider him an edge, but even at the combine, he said, I'm absolutely a linebacker. Wisconsin made me primarily rush, so however you want to look at it. After that, I have Malik Harrison from Ohio State, so I know you Buckeyes guys are going to like that. After that, I have Jordan Brooks, Texas Tech, who just kind of got on my radar probably like this past week. Still making the same place. There is tremendous depth at the linebacker position. After that, then I have Kenneth Murray, Kenneth Murray, then Akeem Davis-Gaither, Troy Dye, and then my number 10 is Logan Wilson. So that's my top 10, and I'll be posting that on my page on Instagram. If you guys don't know, I'm Zim_Hude on Instagram.
Right, that was a great list. So before we close out, Zim, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
I just wanted I want to say there is a chance the number 33 pick is so high value, it is almost 200 points higher on a trade chart that NFL has been collecting over the years. It's the perfect situation since we do have a lot of holes. I don't know why he's saying that we don't have a lot of holes. On the offensive lines, there's a ton of holes. I will argue. We're not even going to talk about the holes. This is it. They have a possibility of possibly getting 2 second-round picks, but they need to not go past number 40. But there are 4 teams that have 2 second-round picks that if this team needs to get up to the top of that round, say a quarterback that somebody is not thinking drops, say a Herbert pulls a Lamar Jackson, right, overnight, like something crazy, Jordan Love, somebody that should not be there, Eason, or somebody that's a quarterback primarily that a team is really, really in need of or planning for their future. That night, if that team is the Colts, the Texans, the Bears, or the Ravens, which we probably don't count on the Ravens, Bears, I would think so, right? But those teams, because Texas now, Deshaun Watson's now getting caught in a bunch of trade rumor stuff. But that's not, don't pay attention to the team. Pay attention to the fact that these are the 4 teams that have 2 second-round picks. When I look on the trade chart, the 33rd pick is slightly higher than the point values that these four teams have. But if someone like a quarterback or somebody that they really, really consider elite is sitting right there, the Bengals have an opportunity to possibly turn that into 2 second-round picks. But there is no circumstance, there is no scenario where they wouldn't come back and get a second-round pick that doesn't go past 40. So you're trading back 7, 8 spots at the most, and then you're picking up another third-round pick. And a lot of these guys that we talked about today will be there in the third round. And so for me, it's almost a no-brainer because even when we go through these tackles and we could go through the guards and we can go through the linebackers, there. When I said earlier in the pod, I said that it'd be impossible for them to Drew sample to pick. Every time I do a mock, there's literally like after I pick when I'm on the clock at the 33rd pick, there's literally like 12 to 15 guys that 10 to 12 guys that I would pick right at the 33rd spot. If I can do that and trade back and pick up another third, I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer, bro.
Right. I think I have to agree with that. Like, depending on who's there, right? If it's a Del Pitt or if there's a Josh Jones, I think that you have to. And let me not get things misconstrued. It's likely that Josh Jones isn't going to be there. So let me not sell you guys on this fact that Josh Jones will be there. He could,
but say he isn't. But say he isn't. Look at all them guys that we just named on our list. Right. It's gonna be 2 or 3 of them dudes that's there that everybody would take. Austin Jackson, Isaiah Wilson, Cesar. If he's not there, that means somebody else is going to be there. And then you got other guys say 2 running backs go. Say DeAndre Swift and another running back. Say Nabil Gallimore, who we did in our mock, who does get mocked a lot. Like say some of these interior defensive linemen. Say these positions that we aren't really targeting. There might be a run on corners because the value of a corner is much higher. The only reason why we're not looking at corners because we just spent all that money on Trent Williams, McKenzie, and I still will argue I will be looking at a couple. Like if Terrell from Alabama was there, I still would say, hey, I'll get him too. But my point is, there's going to be a run on something, and it's going to push a lot of these guys that we like.
Right, it really is. It really is.
These guys that we're talking about, it's not a Drew sample type situation. There's a lot of these guys that will still be there in the middle of the second.
And one guy, I think what we don't want to happen though is we're in a different situation this year because we got the first pick in the second round. But last year, when a guy like Cody Ford was not expected to be there, some people had Cody Ford going in the top 10, and he got there. And rumors came out that the Bengals attempted to draft up, but they didn't pull the trigger, and then they settled for Drew Sample. There's going to be someone like that there. What really is going to entice them is how much someone's going to offer to move up to that second round pick. Now, if they give you a king's ransom for that to move up there, I think that you have to take it. If they're not giving you adequate value and there's somebody there that shouldn't be there, let's just say Andrew Thomas, in that situation, yeah, you pull the trigger. But I think the best move is what Zim is suggesting and what some of the people in the comments are suggesting is if there is a pick to move back and try to acquire some better talent, it would possibly be that 33 pick.
I mean, and I'm looking at there's an argument. If the Bengals have on their board, this is the only way I could say them.
Like AJ Epinesa, what if he's there? What are you doing?
Say he's there, right? But say this is a different question though. For me, I would pass on him because Zach Bond. That means to me, Zach Bond has probably come off the board, or somebody had to come off the board that I wasn't thinking was going to come off the board, right? This is a Bengals question. If their board has Epinesa as a first round prospect, yeah, 33, you go get him. For all we know, Denzel Mims, or any of those guys, a lot of these guys were saying they might have, like, say they had them in their top 10, top 15, and then they're at the 33. Yeah, you go take them unless you make a deal with a team and say, these conversations happens. You go back like 3-4 spots and you know for certain that those teams aren't taking your guy or something like that, then maybe you do it. But if that's your guy, if Patrick Queen is your guy, go ahead, take him. I'm not against that. I'm just saying that there's going to be a bunch of guys there. This is a scenario that James repeated throughout to me, and I want to close out with this. And I want to surprise Ace because we like to do things unscripted. He threw this out at the number 65 pick is what the new value is now equated to for Trent Williams. You now have we're talking about all these offensive tackles and all these different guys like that. These guys, in my mind, will never be Trent Williams currently right now. I feel like if you guys don't, if you like Trent, if you like Andrew Whitworth and you're a Bengals fan or whatever, I live in the Washington, D.C. area. Trent Williams is a 7-time Pro Bowler, elite tackle that can play left or right tackle. This is not a Cordy Glenn situation. He was given some medicals, played with his life. The people might have thought he had cancer. It's a very confusing story. And ultimately, he just doesn't want to play for the Redskins. He's super motivated. The players that I talk to that are around him, that are currently training with Trent Williams, say this guy is. I talked to people on a bank. I've talked to 2 players on the Bengals team that say he's in the top 3 tackles in the NFL currently right now, behind the guy for the Raiders and the guy for the Saints. They said that, and that's no cap. Everybody around the league believes that. All players believe that. If you have the third, now the new value is a 3rd round pick. You now have your quarterback on a rookie contract, which is very important for you, Mr. Chase Young fan guys. The value of a rookie quarterback is unprecedented and unmatched. You have that. You have the ability to wash Andy Dalton off your roster. You then go sign Joe Mixon, do whatever you want to do. But Trent Williams could be had for $14, $15 million a year. You will have the money to pay it in this 3 to 4 year window with this rookie quarterback. Give up the number 65 pick. Do you give it up for Trent Williams?
Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer. A 3rd round draft pick for Trent Williams. Yeah, I'd do that deal all day because, number one, he's still in his early 30s. So it's not like this is a guy that could honestly play until he's about 37, 38. We're seeing that right now with Andrew Whitworth, who I think is possibly in his 40s. So, yeah, I would definitely take a guy like that with a 3rd round pick, especially if that sweetens the pot to the point where I can take Joe Burrow number 1 and I can take the best player available that could be another 1st rounder at the 33. I'd do that. And then I can go and I can still solve my offensive line problem with getting him there. Yeah, I would do that.
And then this great debate about our offensive line and the national narrative, all this stuff,
over.
It goes away. It's all over. So if you're in the Bengals front office and you hear that offer, you got to move. If they've been aggressive like they just were with $100-something million, $108 million in free agency, you don't stop right there. You go get Trent and you go make a playoff run year 1. And it sounds a little crazy, but it's really not. As Ace has pointed out to me, the 49ers were 4 and 12. I mean 4 and 12. Go on to go to the Super Bowl the following year.
Right. I have to agree. So with that being said, thank you guys for joining us. I really appreciate the comments. I appreciate the super chats. If you're not following us and you want to see this live and you want to participate and ask questions, definitely be sure to subscribe to my channel, New Stripe City. We do these shows. If you hit the notification bell, you will get a notification when we're doing it. They'll be starting with the title, Orange is the New Black. So whenever you see that come across your notifications, be sure to click on it. And if you guys want to talk to Zim directly, I know Ryan wanted to explain himself. That's been commented in the comment box. You can find him on Instagram at Zim_Hude. You can find us both on Twitter, Zim at Zim_Hude, all one word, no underscore. And you can find me at New Stripe City on Twitter. This has been the Orange is the New Black podcast.
We got a special show. We got a special show coming up. You're going to tell them we're going to be collaborating with all of the Cincy Jungle Syndicate, and everybody is going to get together and create the force of Power Rangers. You remember when Power Rangers would get together, and I never really watched a full episode, but they would all get together, and then they would do something spectacular. And I think I'm kind of like the White Ranger, because wasn't he like the most lit Ranger?
Yes, he was.
All right, I'm the White Ranger, and we're all going to get together, and we're going to create this crazy force with Matt Minich, John Sheeran, and Anthony Kazenza. And it's coming up soon. We're going to do a draft special. Who Dey?